Can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. My feet have come too far for you to tie 'em to the ground. Can't stop me now. Can't stop me now. Set my sights on where I'm going at. Be turning back around. Can't stop me.
Well, good evening and welcome to Psychic Call Shop. I'm Aeson Knight, and tonight with me is Zane. And you've been busy, and I just found out we knew each other through your work probably now 40 years. So that was a little shocking. But what have you been up to? You've got 2 books out, and now you're doing something else.
Well, I started an online academy. It's called Smart Soul Academy. And I discovered back in 1993, and I've been decoding and figuring it out ever since, that we all have an internal guidance system. And I don't mean like, oh, we have an instinct, an intuition. It's different than intuition. We have a physical thing that's actually reprogramming our neural pathways in our brain moment to moment when we learn how to use it.
Ooh, interesting. How is this different than psychic ability?
Oh my God, that's so great that you asked that question. Okay, so I'm psychic, I'm claircognizant, and I'm empathic. And so every single person's psychic ability is different. Even if we put 5 claircognizant persons in the room, the way that we receive information is unique and different to each person based on their history, based on what they know, the types of information they can get or can't get. It's all unique. The internal guidance system, which I've decoded, and I'm going to have you walk through a quick experiment with it to see what you think, works the same way. I've worked with over 40,000 people, and it works the same way in every single human being. We can count on it in the way that it responds to our thinking. And it's cross-cultural, cross-religion, cross anything. You know, it doesn't matter if you're an atheist, agnostic, Christian, Buddhist, Muslim, it works the exact same way. I kind of think of it as like, it's as steady as a heartbeat. Once you learn how to use it, you can trust it, and you can absolutely know how. We're intuitive or psychic abilities, they're different.
They are. They work differently, every single one of them. They all have an imprint of faith on some level, you know, atheists all the way up to Zen Buddha. There is a connection there. So how does this GPS for humans work?
You broke up there. Can you say
How
that again?
does basically human GPS work? What's it working on?
So I've discovered that when you feel a lump in your throat, you know, where you feel like you got a block, right? Or a tightness in the chest, or a sick feeling like a rock in the center of your solar plex area, this is actually guidance. And what it means is that what you're thinking in that moment is not true or not going to happen. Now, lots of people say, well, how do you know that? Because I've worked with 40,000 people, and there's a very interesting thing that happens is that you start to realize that your mind creates things that are not true. So I'll give you an example. What color is a yield sign in the United States?
Yellow.
Okay. So most people say yellow. In 1971, Congress decided to change it to red and white. By 1974, all of the yellow yield signs were replaced with red and white. Now, here's the thing. This is what I found that's super fascinating. It doesn't matter what information we put into our brain, it won't update it. You can pass by, and everybody's jumping in to go Wikipedia. You're welcome to look on your own. Everybody's like, no, I know it's yellow and black. You can see it clearly in your head, but it's actually red and white. And it's been red and white for over 50 years. We have no mechanism in our brain to update what is false. We get programmed between the ages of 0 and 7. Now, I have people after 1974 who say yellow and black. Why is that? It's because it's in our cultural consciousness. So it's on billboards, book covers, T-shirts. Even my son, who's 8, at 2 years old, saw the Frozen guy, who's the snowman in Frozen, dancing around Sesame Street with a yellow and black yield sign. It's now with a song. Songs are even way more you can program our brain, right? And so he now has the yellow and black yield sign. And so it's fascinating. Most of the time, the people who have it right in my audiences, which can range up to 10,000 people, they're not from this country. They came and they learned the traffic rules by coming in fresh. And so the thing that I found is that and this is really interesting, we can't update our brain with new information. That's why people are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on programs. They get excited. They come home after Sunday night, Monday morning, they're going to get it going. And then Wednesday, they're back to their old habits because new information doesn't update your brain. I can give you a crayon, a red crayon, and you can write out, color out a red and white. You're still looking at the red and white yield sign, aren't you? Anyways, you can color out the red and white yield sign, and then you'll have it. Our body updates our brain. And so the coolest thing ever is we have this collapsed lump in the throat, tightness in the chest, tightness in the solar plexus. You can pivot your brain, and that's what I teach in Smart Soul Academy. You can pivot your brain and you'll get an expanded feeling. And that body sensation starts a new neural pathway. We can fix anything that doesn't work by using our internal guidance system.
Okay. Interesting. Now, is this why that my generation, your generation has the Berenstain Bears and it was never the Berenstain Bears?
Oh my goodness. That's a whole other conversation.
Okay.
I have a whole nother opinion and we can talk about that. If you want, we can talk about that. We actually don't have to talk about my work at all. I love to just
we want to talk about your work and see how this works. I mean, because I pass at least 5 yield signs.
And you never noticed?
Never noticed. They're always yellow to me.
You actually, this is something that's really fascinating is you can't see them at all.
No.
That's the other thing. Like they talk about, and I don't know if this is true or not, but they talk about how the Indians, when Christopher Columbus came into the bay in South America, they couldn't actually see the ship. And it was a shaman that actually alerted the tribe because they'd never seen a ship before. There's a barrier. And we have these in our lives. So the way I discovered this was I had a really traumatizing youth. I mean, I was physically, verbally, and sexually abused. And I came out of the gate. I emancipated from my family and dropped out of high school at 17 and came out the gate resentful, angry, pissed off, and self-sabotaging. And so I was trying to make it in the world. And I would do things like get in a fight with my roommate and be like, I'm moving out. And then I'd cool off and be like, what did I do? I'm going to live out of my car now. Or I'd quit a job because they criticized me. They're actually just helping me be better at my job, but I didn't see it. I saw criticism and I would say, I'm quitting. And I'd walk down the street expecting them to chase me down for my dishwasher job and say, no, don't go. We can't survive without you. And nobody ever did that.
Yeah.
Nobody ever chased me down. But I was having all these issues, and a friend of mine gave me a cassette tape in 1992 from a little known person, Esther Hicks. And at that time, they were just doing interviews. Like people just come to a living room with 5 people and ask questions, and they'd answer them. And this cassette tape was really interesting. What she wanted me to know is that the law of attraction is in effect and that I'm creating my own self-sabotage. Mm-hmm. But that piece, there was a piece where she talked about the internal guidance system. And when our thoughts are in alignment, and our thoughts create reality, when our thoughts are in alignment, we have an open, expansive, or even neutral feeling, and we're moving in the right direction. But as soon as it collapses, it gets tight in the center of our body, our thinking is off. We're not in the state of allowing. We're not moving to where we need to be. And that we are creating things that we don't want to create. And I swear to you, Aeson, I listened to that cassette tape. I probably rewound that 5-minute clip because it was so short, 80, 90 times. Because I had that foggy feeling that you get in your forehead. You know what I'm talking about? When you know there's a breakthrough, but you can't grok it. You can't get to it. And finally, I realized that every time I blew my life up, I had that tight feeling. And so I became committed to deciphering this. And that was 1992. I started following it. I started understanding it. I went from a high school dropout to getting my diploma at night school, going to college, junior college, getting my degree from UC Davis in foreign policy, starting an import-export company, and then starting a multi-million-dollar tech firm in 1997 in downtown San Francisco. We were one of the first usability design firms ever for the internet. Wow. That was 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens is when you start following this opening sensation, staying in the state of allowing, pre-paving the road with your thinking that's opening, things happen really fast. And I believe it's the way that we get back on our purpose, our blueprint for why we're here. And that's what this is about.
Okay. Very cool. So let's do this test because
Okay.
I work the law of attraction, or I think I work the law of attraction. I teach classes on opening up psychic selves. So let's get this GPS running because I've said I'm the Google of psychics. So what's up?
Okay. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you an exercise that you can do with all of your everybody out there listening. We could do this. Now don't close your eyes if you're driving or walking down the street, but I do recommend you close your eyes. This is just the beginning. This is just when you start getting in touch with it. So close your eyes and feel the bottom of your feet. Now what you're going to notice is there'll be a little tingling, a little warmth as you put your awareness on your feet. And then feel the palms of your hands. Once again, you're going to feel a little tingling. Now I'm going to give you 2 statements. Just let them float through your mind like a cloud does through the sky, and notice how you feel between your throat and upper solar plex area, the center of your body. Now, when I give you the statement, try not to argue or discount it. Your mind's doing that. Just let it float through and notice any sensation. Feet, hands, put your awareness there. Here's the first statement. I do not have an internal guidance system. Don't argue, just let it float through and notice any sensation. I do not have an internal guidance system. Here's the second statement. Hands and feet again, put your awareness on your feet and hands. I do have an internal guidance system. Noticing any shift between your throat and your solar plex area. I do have an internal guidance system. All right, wiggle your toes, open your eyes. Aeson, how was that? What did you see? What did you feel?
Interesting. The false statement, who was immediately thrown back at me like, "Are you an idiot?" Yes, you do. And of course, the same things. But I also get that tingling headache right here in the middle of the third eye, and I get that every time someone's trying to direct a reading, and it's like, no, he hasn't called you in 20 years. He isn't coming back. I get that same like throb of the headache, like you're hurting my head. And then when, yes, you have an internal guidance system, everything relaxed. Zane? Zane?
There's a lump in the throat, tightness in the chest, or sick feeling in the. That means what you're thinking is not. Other people feel is this release, like they can breathe suddenly. There's an expansion, there's an upward V, there's a release of all tension. I call that an opening. And our bodies are moving between closing, neutral, and opening all day long. It literally is working like a compass or the hot cold game, where it's not a yes or a no. And that's very important. When you feel tight, it's not a no. And when you feel open, it's not a yes. What that is this thinking is opening because it's carrying you towards what you want to achieve. And because we have these limited mental boxes that we live in, our IGS has to move us with the closest thought it can find. And it will keep moving you towards that soul purpose, that blueprint for your life. And it'll get you there however it can, right? And so what that means is like, let's say you're trying to decide where to move. And you're thinking New York, New Jersey. But you're supposed to be in New Hampshire. But there's no mental idea in your head about moving to New Hampshire. So there's 2 places on this. Number 1, magic and synchronicity are always the norm. And the only thing that's different between nature, which if you walk out into the forest, you'll see that everything's working magically and synchronistically. All of the bugs and the trees and the leaves and the way that they decay and the wind and everything. We are supposed to be a part of that. We're not separate from Earth. This mind that we have is what's taking us out of our connection to the magic and the synchronicity that is the dominant form of experience on this planet. And so what the IGS is trying to do is through opening to opening to opening, not only are you correcting and actually reprogramming the neural pathways by having this expansion, just like if I had you color out the yield sign, what also is happening is there's a buildup as you begin to use it. It's a flow. It's an energy force that feels like it's coming up out of you and moving you into the next experience. Experiment actually is good too. But experience.
Mm-hmm.
That's what animals and everything, seeds come up out of the ground, whales migrate to it, and we're being asked to come back into that space. And so you won't know that New Hampshire is your place. But what will happen is once you tuned into this as a compass, it will naturally lead you to an experience where you'll be in New Hampshire and go, oh, this is where I belong now. And all of us have these little experiences, depending on how well we're connected throughout our entire life. This is a tool that will get you there consistently, always, that you can count on.
Okay. Interesting. Now, the closed section, because you broke up, or I broke up, one of the two of us broke up. How does that work? Like, what is that closing about?
Okay. So, because we didn't know this existed, we've named these closings many different things. And I've been able to isolate them for the Smart Soul Academy so people can begin working with their closings in a way that makes sense to their mind. Frustration, irritation, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, guilt, procrastination, rushing when you're late for something. These are all forms of closing. You're always closed when you experience these things. It's not positive or negative thinking, and it's not positive or negative emotions. You can be open and angry and closed and angry.
Mm-hmm.
Depends on how aligned your thinking is. Opening anger, such as Martin Luther King Jr. or Gandhi, creates change. Closing creates disruption and rioting and wars. Okay. There are things like guilt, for instance, that is always closing. Notice how guilt is, you never take action on guilt. It just ruminates and sits there, right? What guilt is, it's a programming that you receive between the ages of 0 and 7 by watching the world around you and having people tell you things that tells you whether you're being a bad person or a good person. Now, contrast that with remorse. Remorse is always opening. Remorse, you move forward and you make amends. You shift. It's an action energy, and it's always opening. It's so powerful. Guilt is just in our heads, means nothing. It's always closing. It's never true. And remorse is opening. It means there's something to be done to heal. And so what I've decided, or what I've discovered in deciphering this, is I've outlined all of these archetypical energies, and then I teach people how to work with them. Like frustration is always about a thing or a situation that your mind believes will never change, and your IGS is telling you it will. Irritation is about a person that your mind has decided will never change, and your IGS is closed, meaning that's not true, and it will open when you shift to what is possible. And so that's what we teach at Smart Soul Academy, is like how to actually get in touch with this and lead your life with discernment and wisdom.
Interesting. So are these live classes? Are these videos? Are these seminars?
I love that. Thank you for asking. Okay, so I believe in the Miyagi approach. Remember wax on, wax off with the Karate Kid?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
All right. Yes. Wax on, wax off, right? So just like I said, I can ask you what color a yield sign is in a year and a half, and because there's no physical change, it's just information in your brain.
Right.
It won't. You still know it's a trick, but you won't be able to say yellow and anything but yellow and black because you see it so viscerally. So what I discovered in all this work is I have to get you physically doing something. And so it's an online academy that's pre-recorded. It's $47 a month without coaching, and $97 with 5 coaching calls a month group with me. And what we do is I give you a tiny practice. It's less than 15-minute lecture. And then you go and you take on something in your life for 3 or 4 days with this practice I give you. And you feel the transition happening. The neural pathways are being recreated. Everything's shifting. And then I give you another less than 15-minute lecture with a practice, and you go do that for another 3 or 4 days. And over the course of the 4 months, what happens is we just give you 2 practices a week that magically and amazingly easily, and it's super compelling because you're like, wow, everything's changing. I give you the practices you need to learn how to reprogram your mind. Okay. In that membership, we have 13 programs. So we handle relationship as a spiritual path and working like a woman in this world. Most of our emotions are programmed by watching how other people react. They're not our authentic emotions. So we have creating emotional authenticity, and it just goes on and on. We have tons, wealth through flow, like how to reprogram your mind to be in a wealth mindset throughout your entire day. So it's really everything you need to know to like follow your IGS, and that's the program. And I made it cheap, easy, and then it's really fun. It's fun. You don't have to like stop and write in a workbook or no.
You get to activate it. You get to be moving with it. Now you do have the book out.
Yes.
So, maybe if someone isn't ready for the step of the academy, they can get the GPS book.
So yes, go ahead and get your inner GPS. The thing that I want to caution you on is it's information we're putting into your brain that doesn't create transformation. And so if you are committed, there's exercises in there. And if you are a self-starter and you do the exercises in the book, you will get the transformation. But most people, that's not how they work. Like they actually need the audio. They need the incremental, the reminder every 2 weeks to do the next and the next thing and the next thing. Otherwise, it's just going to become some cool information that you read that was interesting, and your life doesn't change, just like all the programs and all the books and all the courses and everything. My commitment, I've been doing this since 2001, and I started this company in 2006. And I've been in beta mode up until last year, beta testing people, because I wanted to make sure that no matter what, I could get the transformation that I guaranteed. I guarantee the transformation in people's lives.
Right.
And I worked this all out until I knew, and I know now because I've had 4,000 people go through the program and they've all got the transformation. Literally, even the people that barely show up come back again and again because they're like, oh, this works. So the book is great. I recommend it for students who have already done it. If you just do the 4-month program, which is less than $200, your whole life's going to be different, and you're going to know how to program your mind. The book is great, and I recommend it, but it's like a little manual for like, oh, I forgot something.
Okay.
How does it work? Here's the troubleshooting. My mind is doing this to me. And then you read it and you're like, oh, this is how I get out of it. But new information doesn't create transformation.
Okay. What's this app?
I wish it did. Huh?
What's the app?
Oh, it's called Smart Soul. I recommend you go through the website, Smart Soul Academy, and then we give you a code, and then all the content's in the app, so you can take it with you on the go.
Oh, that's cool. Like that's a step above because everyone's running Mighty Network, this clones, this back house. There's a few different back houses for training programs. Your coaching is ridiculously low, darling, because you're doing 4 sessions a month. You're already paying, for $94. You're not even making $1 a minute, honey. I don't care if you keep those coaching sessions at 5 minutes.
I agree. Well, I work with executives in major companies, huge, biggest, top of the line, BlackRock, Google, these different companies. And so I'm good. But my goal is global transformation. I believe that when people learn how to use it, that magic and synchronicity leads them to their significance and where they belong in their lives, and their purpose unfolds in front of them without effort. And I see this tool that we're born with. We have this. All I did was decode it. I see this as the next level of human evolution. I see this as our species getting back in alignment with nature and each other to where we can actually recreate paradise on this earth that works for everyone. And so this work that I'm teaching for this low dollar amount is because there shouldn't be anyone excluded. I do need to be paid because it takes money to produce these things, but no one should be excluded from this part of themselves. And I I was charging $2,000 for 4 months. This program, Stress to Happiness, which is the first program, I actually sold for a couple of years for $2,000. And there were people who were really interested and they couldn't afford it. And that's the industry standard, right? They're like, okay, for this 4 months and with as much as you're giving and the coaching and all of that, this is the charge. I would have people in India and Costa Rica and South America who would, I was giving scholarships to for the $2,000, and they were committed and they really worked hard. And then something inside me was like, this isn't mine. I mean, I teach it and I decoded it, but this belongs to humanity. And so I work with large corporations and bringing the same work in to a system, because I was a CEO of tech. I did lots of high level consulting when I was a business after the .com crash. And this business can be really amazing the more people we get. But I just felt like there was something about, how could I ever keep it from somebody because they can't afford it?
Right.
This is a part of their soul. This is their guidance system. And so I made a specific decision to make sure it was affordable, and also that it could actually pay for the people that I have employed to make sure that they have the right care to have this happen. So you're right. It's unbelievably cheap.
Yeah.
My executive coaching is 100 times more.
Yeah. And
but yeah.
But and because I just launched Psychic Coach, opening up the coaching side of me and my business. How was your opening? I mean, it sounds like you've done some really big things. You've done some really groundbreaking things with this. So how is it with you? How is it that you're doing this and not like stressing, not, echoing out, oh my God, I'm going to lose it all?
Stress is always closing. And so this is really great because I actually do use my system and I walk my talk. And stress, anxiety, overwhelm, fear, frustration, all of that is closing. And I know that means what I'm thinking is not true or not going to happen. And so what happens is that I look at what I really want. And this is one of the most powerful ways to run a business. So for instance, I'll give you an example. I was on the track of other personal development teachers where you do a big launch, you sell people into the $2,000 program, you do this $2,000 program, and then you have to sell them into the next thing, right? The advanced level or whatever. And then you have to go back and you're also selling people into the beginning program. And it just became this rat race. And I hated it. Right. I didn't want to sell all the time. And so I was sitting there and I felt it. I was like thinking about producing the work in the way that everybody else does. And I was closed, which means what I'm thinking isn't true. And so I started looking around about what I wanted. Now, the thing about most teachers in this level is we have tons of archived courses that are just as brilliant. They're just not the new thing.
Right.
Those programs, and they were wonderful. Power manifestation was one of them. I have a formula for how to manifest things. A, B, C, D equals what you get. And you can reverse engineer it. D, C, B, A, and you can take what's happening in your world and you can reverse engineer it with this model. Wasn't getting sold, wasn't out there. So what I really wanted was to be able to basically give everybody what I had, all of it, for one price. And then I could just enroll people into one thing and I could keep producing content for my community. And it opened me. And that's where the membership came from. Now that was 2.5 years ago. And now everybody's moving to a membership model. Stable income. You can give your best. You can take really good care of everybody and make sure they actually get the transformation you guarantee. So my IGS actually leads me in my business model, and whatever I'm unhappy with and I'm stressed or uncomfortable with, that is a call to action to look at what's not working and to make something new work. Right. So I'm not stressed because I'm being led, just like from being a high school dropout to a $6 million a year tech company as a CEO. I would have never dreamed I could do that. We had all Fortune 500. We had an office in San Francisco, an office in London, Applied Materials, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, British Petroleum were our clients and more. And I would have never dreamed that I had the capability to do that. But my IGS led me, opening to opening to opening. And so that's what happens. And stress is a guidance that you need to shift what's happening.
Right. And you need to kind of focus on where it's at. So with this built-in system, How do you start testing? How did you start working with it?
Oh, it was so hard. First of all, like the yellow yield sign we just talked about, my mind would have a reaction, a trigger. And it was really hard because it's so real. The stories, the imagination we have, and the meaning we make to things, and people, so real. I was like, I know. Let me give you an example. I am a very emotional person. I came downstairs one day, and I was so excited about this new thing I found. Telling my husband all about it. I was so excited. And he looked at me and he goes, I hate it manipulating me like this.
Zane,
Now,
breaking up.
Okay, so I came upstairs there, and my husband, I was so excited about an idea. And my husband said to me, I hate it when you manipulate me like this. And my immediate reaction inside was, I'm not manipulating him. And I closed. I tightened my body, which means what I'm thinking isn't true. And I thought, I am manipulating him, and my body relaxed, just like the exercise you had. I said to him, I don't feel like I'm manipulating you. Tell me what you're thinking. Tell me what you mean. And he said, you're so excited. I either go with you or I disappoint you. And I haven't had a chance to even think about what's right for me. But you put me in between this rock and a hard place. And you're so enthusiastic. I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to let you down. But at the same time, I need to think about these things for myself. And I got it. Now, old Zen from the high school dropout era, where I was self-sabotaging, she would have said, I am not manipulating you. And I would have gone into all this proof and all this crap, and nothing would have been solved. And we all do this in our lives. Right. Nothing would have been solved. But instead, I got it. And I was like, okay, I will cut the exuberance in half, and I'll give you time to think. And it's okay. I'm always going to come up with a new idea. It's who I am, you know? Right. And these are these little moments where those yellow yield signs come in, and we don't even know it. We have these triggers, these responses, and they sabotage us. They cause devastation in relationships and all over our world. And these are the things that get healed instantly, because you can feel the truth and your mind doesn't know what the truth is. If you follow your mind, you're going to go off track because it was programmed when you were a kid. And this is a system that allows us to program our minds as we're going throughout our day. Just like that. It's like, I am not manipulating him. Ooh, that's not true. All right, let's take another look at this. And you can go really far on following these openings and trusting that it knows more about you, who you are, where you want to go, why you even came here as a human being at all. This thing knows. And if you work with it, it will share it with you. And life gets easy. It gets magical. Like I said, synchronicity is the norm. And we were born with this. We were born with this. We've always had it.
So this all started from a
Yeah.
Very interesting. It's an interesting journey, especially with you building a tech company, and you've blasted off from it, and now you've got the academy running. How's the tech company going?
They're still in alignment. They're still going good. It's called Net Kitchen. I left because what happened for me was when the .com crash happened in 2000, it's like September 22nd, 2001. Everything, we went into a hole too. And I really thought we had shored up. I could see it coming. I could feel it coming. And so that's why we had all Fortune 500 companies, but everybody pulled back because they didn't know what was going to happen. So even these big contracts we had with like Applied Materials or BP, they put everything on hold, which for a little 45-person company, that's hard. So what happened was we started working on getting through that. We were expanding financially when the contraction happened. And so we had debt, we had all these things going on. So we started working through that. And I was using my internal guidance system. And my friends who were also in tech, they started saying to me, because I'm good, I'm like coming in, I'm like, hey, how you doing? And they're like, oh, I've got all this tax debt. I've got this and the other thing. I just laid off 75 employees and all this. They said, either give me the name of the doctor who's giving you your drugs or tell us what you're doing, because you're okay and we're not. And so I started teaching the internal guidance system. I actually started teaching manifestation. using the law of attraction. But what everybody hooked into was this internal guidance system piece, which is just one sliver of the program. And so I started expanding that. And over time, I left the tech company. My partners are still there. And they're still running it and doing great. I mean, that's like a long time, 22 years later, it's still going. But I realized that there was a real need, there was a real craving and appetite for this piece that I had decoded for myself. And it was really hard because I knew how it worked inside of me with my brain. And when I started to pull it out of me, because it happened organically, I started working with other people's minds, and all of our minds are so insane. So I had to like figure out how human mind works. And that took me another 13 years to really nail it.
Right.
So that they could get the openings and figure out what's going on. And then I created a set of practices from what I learned with thousands of people that I know work for everyone.
Cool.
And so that's how it works.
Very cool. Do you see a difference between neurodivergent and what we'll call reality-based minds?
No. So it's interesting because I see problems sometimes with people who are engineers or attorneys or doctors. Those minds have been broken down in university and then built back with the way you're supposed to think. And I think that's a very important process. But then they become so reliant on their thinking that they don't want to listen to another system. The other group of people that I find that has challenges, there's two actually. The other group of people that I find has challenges are people who've been abused and they physically can't, or they have health issues that are painful and they've disconnected from their body. And so I have tools to use for both these groups.
Okay.
You're going to probably think this is really funny what I have to say next.
Okay.
The other group are people that have spent their life following spiritual teachings and doctrine. They think and personal development doctrine. They really think they know everything. They only keep going to the next course. They never want to graduate. They never want to be finished. Their community, their lives are tied up in going from teacher to teacher to teacher. And I'm not interested in that. Right. And so they have a tendency to wash out really quick because I'm about you can do this. You're your guru. You don't need a guru. I'm not going to be your guru. And so what ends up happening is they just kind of wash out because they need to find somebody that they're going to follow that's going to pat them on the head and say, you're so amazing and you're so brilliant and they're really hard to work with. And I don't market people anymore. No, they're not really actually here to make a change in the world and to actually live their purpose. They're here to like just look for the next broken thing about themselves. I'm sorry. I know that sounds probably really.
No, honey, it sounds perfectly like
but the truth of the matter is, it's what it is.
You know, it's totally in my ideology because I'm sorry, you know, it's like people call me and they want like a 2-hour reading. I'm like, your life ain't that crazy.
Yes. So my people, when I work with a client, an executive client, we work together for 5 months and they're done. And they are like, what if I want to continue? I'm like, well, if you want to continue, we'll talk about it. But I'm going to let you know right now, you're going to be complete and done. And everything you want to do, achieve, and your capacity to do this on your own, you'll actually say, I really want to keep working with you, but I'm done. And I'm like, I know, because I only need that. I want people to graduate and get their butts back out in the world and make a difference, because that's what we need right now on this planet. It's a bunch of people who have wisdom and discernment. They know how to manage anything that comes at them, and they don't need me anymore. Now, a lot of people stay in my classes because they're fascinating, you know, like emotional authenticity and relationship as a spiritual path and wealth. These courses, they just take what you've learned in the first 4 months and then they excel them into every other area. And you just become wiser and wiser and wiser and clean up more and more and more. So they stay. Some people don't even show up anymore. They just keep paying me the monthly fee because they felt like what I was doing was so cheap. They just want to continue to contribute so I can keep going. But my desire is for people to be cooked, done, powerful, and out in the world doing their thing.
Right. That's like my readings. I'm here to like give you the next point. Go do the next point and then figure out if you need me again. So I totally get that model of business, that model of ideas. You know, I had someone compare me before to the ER doctor. I was like, yeah, I went in and out, give you the point you need to go to. So this inner guidance system, I'm loving. I'm loving the idea of it. I find that it's interesting that it links into the chakra system, which is in so many systems and have been added to. And yes, there's other spiritualities that have used the same points and different points, and I find that interesting. Um, so what's next?
Well, for me, you mean for me?
Yeah.
I really would love to have a group of people that come in and learn how to manage the Smart Soul Academy.
Mm-hmm.
I want to work with large corporations from the
Mm-hmm.
top down and bring this in, because think about what it would be like if a company were able to sit around a boardroom and they find the opening, which opening begets opening, and your openings are always good for everyone around you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things that I show you and teach. All this stuff proves itself.
Right.
I would love to work with large organizations and political organizations so that I train them how to do this so they can follow their openings to
Mm-hmm.
create things that work for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that, especially in the United States, we have this huge polarization, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I check in with my own IGS about what's going on, everybody, most, there's some people that are not, they're totally after themselves and they're grafting, you know, but
Mm-hmm.
there are a huge amount of people that think that from the way they've been trained, their cup is different, is filled with different stuff than other people's cups. But they
Mm-hmm.
really do want to make a change, like ending fossil fuel. But they don't have the capacity to understand how to transition that in a way that supports everyone getting
Mm-hmm.
there, right? They're like, we're going to cut it off and who cares who's suffering? Well, that's, you know, if they were following their openings, they would create solution-based situations and long-term plans that would allow that to happen with grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I really want to move this work into larger organizations, working and political experiences where I can teach people how to follow this in a way that they really get to do what they entered into the public service world and the corporate world to do. So that's
Yeah.
what's next for me.
I can see
And
it
then
working
and
in the
teams.
corporate world and doing really well. You're going to just have a small ego problem to get over there.
Yeah.
The political world, however, I think you're going to have to wait for dinosaurs to die.
Some, but you know, there are a lot of young people in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that if I tune them into their own internal guidance system where they can
Mm-hmm.
feel it themselves, that creative energy that's being wasted in so many ways with solutions that aren't going to actually work, they'll be able to actually fuel their power. And it's really interesting. One of the things that's really cool about this is for women. I'm just checking in with my IGS before I say this. I feel that men, from what and this is through experience of working with students,
Mm-hmm.
are so tired of the female emotional energy. It's exhausting. It's hard. They'll shut it down because they don't have a capacity, and it doesn't mean there's nothing wrong with that. But a lot of women are being thrown about by our hormones and our emotions and our belief systems and all these different things. And what I've found in using Smart Soul Academy is that the women in the academy ground, and they can tell when they're making up a story or they're creating drama or whatever is happening, and they're able to be open in their emotional experience. When the woman isn't open in their emotional experience, they're things that work is there's a feminine leadership that happens. There's a feminine leadership that starts to emerge, and it's natural because they're just following their openings and they can be heard. So I equate this to people who are in a paradigm where everybody has to believe the same thing, or there's a funnel happening to put people into a direction. And when you start to wake up and you're using the openings in your conversation and you're communicating ideas from this place of opening, other people begin to wake up in their discernment. Other people begin to wake up in their capacity to be creative, not just in this linear, I've been trained this way, but from a place of their individual significance and belonging of why they're here. And this is magic. And so I would agree with you with the ego and the politics and things, but I do believe that if we can get in and even start on a local level, this opening is so powerful and exquisite
Mm-hmm.
Great change happens with ease when someone communicates from that place. And that is where I want to go next.
Very cool. Cool. And again, where can I get information on the academy?
So you go, I have a special thing. So for anybody who wants to experience this for themselves, go to mind, M-I-N-D, spark, SPARK.com, mymindspark.com. And what you'll get there is the first 3 practices that we get you learning how to connect these 2 things, and then learning how to shift and imagine and move your thinking out of your box. So just try that. It's free. There's nothing to it. And then to sign up for the programs, it's smartsoulacademy.com. That's where the programs are, smartsoulacademy.com. So I recommend people just try it out and see how it feels within the first hour of doing the first practice, which is the Miyagi approach, right? These little 15-minute things. You're going to feel a dramatic difference.
Very cool. Well, awesome. Well, thanks for stopping by. Let us know when your next thing comes out, when you next do. You're welcome back here anytime, darling.
Thank you, Aeson.
Thank you. All right, guys, we're going to take a sip and a small break, and then I've got Dr. Joanna ready for us.
Hi, I'm Dottie the Psychic, and I'm sure you're wondering why I'm not wearing any makeup. Well, one reason is to irritate my social media manager, Aeson Knight. Hi, Aeson. The other reason is because I like to get to the naked truth about what it means to be a neurodivergent LGBT person with psychic abilities. I've got vlogs, blogs, and podcasts and videos all related to trying to live my best life and helping witches and bitches do the same thing. So, you can check all that out and get a reading from Dottie the Psychic at DOTTIEthepsychic.com. Safe travel and much profit to you.
Hey everybody, Lady Gwendolyn here, and I am here to tell you how to get in contact with me and a little bit about what I do. I am the High Priestess that works with shadow work to help you grow and heal. And I work with access bars, Reiki, I do power forms. I'm recently getting into crystal healing, sound therapy as well. So you can go to Lady Gwendolyn Healing, that is LadyGwendolynHealing.com. Book your appointment with me. I do in person, I do over the phone, I do over Zoom. We can do that as well. My main goal is to help you grow and heal, because I've been there, I'm still going through it, and I let my strength help guide you. See you soon.
Hi, Dr. Joanne. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Aeson. Good to
Hi. You're in New Zealand. No, you're in Australia.
I'm in Australia.
Yeah. So you have a new book out, The Other Goddesses.
The Other Goddess.
Yes. Now, this is an interesting book. It actually took me about a week or so to go through.
Wow.
But it's not, I go through, I highlight, I'm a messy reader. I'm really bad with it because, it's like, oh, I want to go back and read this. And, oh, I got to jump over here. What is this about?
Oh, wow. That's a very interesting question. So perhaps I will just summarize it very quickly. What was the main premise of the book? So basically, I wanted to ask a question, whether sexuality and spirituality can be experienced as one. Because if you look around us, we are brainwashed, and this is kind of connects with Zen was talking about, before the break, to a particular way of thinking. So there's this another polarity that we are basically brainwashed into or conditioned into, that, sexuality is one thing, spirituality is the other thing. And especially when you look into mainstream media, sexuality is portrayed in one particular way, which is quite, I would say, animalistic, and nothing wrong with it, nothing wrong with great sex, and so on. But it is always kind of portrayed on the lowest level, so to speak.
Right.
And my experience of sexuality was that it could be quite different. So, and because I call myself a spiritual detective, I started to look into esoteric traditions and in esoteric Hinduism and tantric traditions, and later Gnostic Gospels, and Mary Magdalene became the center of the book because of that. Whether there were traditions that actually perceived sexuality differently in a spiritual light, or even use as sexual erotic rapture, sexual pleasure for the purpose of enlightenment, so we can experience what they call cosmic consciousness, or in the West they call it Christ consciousness. So I wanted to basically check, is it possible? Because I was, upset actually by this polarity, right? By this polarity. And also another polarity that I experienced when I was a little girl. And I'm actually originally from Poland, and I was brought up in a very Orthodox Polish Catholicism, which is very medieval form of Catholicism, very strict. And I was, I saw when I went to church, I saw this, picture of Virgin Mary, this very strict, suffering mother archetype that is worshipped. But, you have to be suffering. To be a woman, it means to be, to be compassionate and suffering and self-sacrificial all the time. And there was the other image, the image of Mary Magdalene, which sounded much more interesting, looked much more interesting to me, but it had some, she was some kind of person that was close to Jesus, but somehow, of dubious reputation, right? There's some erotic underlinement there, but I thought it was quite interesting. So I tried to find where there are other goddesses or the lineage of goddesses that kind of connected spirituality and sexuality.
Right. Now you had to go to the Gnostic Gospels for her. Yeah, and some of our listeners may not be familiar with that. Where are they? Why are they not in the traditional Bibles now?
That's actually a wonderful question, and thank you for this, Aeson. So what happened, it is that in the first century, after the event of crucifixion and so on, there were many different type of writings and gospels. Different disciples and disciples of the disciples, and not only men, but also women, were writing, about their experience of being with the teacher, the capital T here, right? Teacher, right? Because they meant Jesus by that. And, there's a whole range of writings. But in the 4th century, around 325 AD, Emperor Constantine, later called Constantine the Great, decided that he's going to convert to Christianity. Actually, his mother told him, Jesus is the upcoming God. If you want to win all the battles, convert to Christianity. So he decided to do this, and he thought, there are so many writings, it's so confusing. We have to get all the bishops together into one place. It was the Council of Nicaea in 325, and let them decide which writings are suitable to become a part of a state religion. Not necessarily the ones that carry most or profound wisdom of teachings or most interesting spiritual experiences, but the ones that are good for to be a state religion. So people know how to behave, and that we still kind of can worship new God, but in old ways. So we will have temples, but they will be called churches, and so on.
Right.
And actually, this council took for a long time, and it was people were disagreeing and so on. And eventually, it was agreed that only the 4 Gospels fulfill this requirement, which was almost like a legal requirement, that they are good to be a state religion. And the rest of them were rejected. And sometimes, other people who, found spiritual nourishment from them, were persecuted and so on. Right. However, nothing can be repressed forever. And this is really good, right? So in 1945, by complete accident, or maybe synchronicity, I don't believe in accidents, right? A bunch of peasants discovered this jar, old jar, and they took it to to the market of antiquities because it looked old, and they thought, Westerners would probably pay some money for it, right? Because it looks old and it's Egypt. And it was actually the other rejected gospels. I think nearly 40 documents of different, which are called Gnostic, which means the ones that were not included, including Gospel of Thomas, which may be the oldest gospel, Gospel of Philip, and so on. But about 70 years earlier, there was another gospel discovered, also in Egypt, which was called the Gospel of Mary Magdalene. How is that? So this is pretty cool. So these things, I think, when we are ready to accept them, actually showed up, from underground and were brought up to light for us.
Right. I think they found a total of 53 additional gospels to the original.
Correct.
And these are 53 different views of spirituality that may have been written by the apostles' third student, the apostles' 15th student, wherever it's at. Now, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is kind of controversial, and here's why I think it's controversial. One is one of the Gospels written by one of the women that financed Jesus. I mean, because he just wasn't walking around, all over the place and being able to, afford food for his people, pay the taxes to get into certain areas, because there were like taxes and fees that you go into Jerusalem. She is part of that legacy of financing and benefiting the teacher. And then after it, it's very well reckoned that she either done one of two things. There's two stories. One is she went out to be the apostle and continue apostatizing. The other one is she went to France and had a child. Which one of the two legends do you subscribe to?
Actually, I have a completely different theory, but I'm going to tell you. But it's a fantastic question, and I love it. As a spiritual detective, I thought that this is so cool. Let's look into this. So first of all, we actually don't know for 100% that she was paying for Jesus's, ministry, so to speak. It is just one of academic theories. So it's
right.
Stay open, and it is quite possible in a way, because there's a documentation but there's a good evidence that she was a woman of independent means, right? So maybe she contributed, maybe she didn't contribute. There's also very good evidence, for example, from Gospel of Philip, that she was in a relationship with Jesus, okay? Right. Because in Gospel of Philip it says that she was his koinonos in Greek. Koinonos means intimate partner. So that upsets all kinds of people, because people will say, okay, either she was just an old woman who was financing his movement, and I say, yeah, duh, how convenient, right? Because they cannot have a relationship. And the other one is that, she was his wife. But this says, she was an intimate partner. So it kind of leaves it in the open, right?
Well, so and even in the, we'll call them controlled gospels.
Yeah.
One of the apostles asked Jesus, why do you kiss her? Why do you kiss her differently than you kiss us, Lord?
That's right. And my answer to this is, duh,
Yeah.
Why do you and us, I wonder, right? So this is, I think that I like to talk about it as well. So that's why these two theories that you mentioned are actually quite legitimate, but I came up with my own as well. So if you don't mind, in the other goddess.
No, I love it.
And then I'll move on to France, which I think it's also actually fits in without the theory that I brought up in my book, The Other Goddess. So what we know, before I start to talk about my theory, that even according to the legend, the French legend, that she went to France, the legend says that it was 15 years after the event of crucifixion. And it makes, so 15 years, there's a break. And it doesn't make sense that she would stay in the Holy Land, because they were all prosecuted, right? So all disciples went somewhere. So she wouldn't stay behind, because it's stupid, right? It would be dangerous for her to stay. So in my book, The Other Goddess, I say I got all of this connection. So it's just a spiritual adventure. I'm not saying it is like that. It's just a possibility. So I have learned that in Alexandria, where was a famous library of Alexandria, was the cultural and spiritual center of the world then in Egypt. And, all philosophers, all spiritual teachers, or scientists lived there. It was like the place. It's like Paris, London, New York in one place. And in this place, Alexandria, there was a group of philosophers, and we know this as a fact from works of other philosophers, called Therapete. And these philosophers accepted women as philosophers, which was very unusual. That's why, and who were philosophers or were spiritually gifted. They were also connected to the temple of Isis in Alexandria, and they were also called healers. So that was one other name, healers, Therapete. They had connections with a Gnostic group called the Essenes in the Holy Land. And Jesus, many scholars connect Jesus with the Essenes in the Holy Land, and therefore Mary Magdalene, right? So I have this theory. I thought, what if, again, just a spiritual detective, open up to possibilities, right? I am not writing a gospel. I'm just looking for connections. So what if Mary Magdalene went to Alexandria after the event of crucifixion because she would have a shelter there and she could continue with, her teachings? It would be a safe harbor for her because she would not stay for 15 years in the Holy Land. Right. They would get her, right? So, and I thought, okay, so if she went there, because there was a group of philosophers that accepted, gifted women to that circle in Alexandria, okay, let's just look through the, National Library of Israel and check, was there a woman who could fit the description of Mary Magdalene in the 1st century of Alexandria? So I found this woman, and she came under 3 names: Mary the Alchemist, Mary the Prophetess, or Mary the Jewess. And apparently she established a well-known school of alchemy, spiritual alchemy, so basically how to achieve a state of ascension, spiritual ascension, not how to turn base metals to gold, which is the physical alchemy, but spiritual alchemy, which talks about ascension. And she was a historical figure, and she lived in Alexandria for a period of time. Now, how do we know this? I started to look into other famous alchemists who lived in 3rd century. His name is Zosimus, who lived in the city of Akhmin in Egypt. And, he confirmed that, she was the famous teacher. And the reason why she was able to open a school of alchemy, and Egyptians are not allowed to do this, because she was a Jewess or half Jewess, because Egyptians were not allowed by the state to do this, okay? Because to share it with the foreigners, so to speak, right? So it's supposed to be like hermeneutic, close knowledge. And then I thought, isn't it interesting that he lived in Akhmin, where the Gospel of Mary Magdalene was also found?
Interesting.
So there must have been some tradition there already, right, of this woman. And then he, living in the city of Akhmin, tells us about this woman who used to, also live in Alexandria, who, at the time that Mary Magdalene could be there. So I understand that it's kind of anecdotal, but it's an interesting possibility. And for example, if I were Mary Magdalene, this is where I would go. I would go where I can go. My teachings, people will know me, they want to accept me, right? I can even open my own school. So it kind of answers your question. She went on prophetizing, yes? So this is kind of, she went teaching, but in Alexandria.
And that makes sense. I mean, that does fit in, because how do you get from Israel to France? And there is a gap of time there.
It is a gap of time.
There's a gap of time in this theory. There's a gap. There's a few other things that connects into the French thing that's almost proven. But the other part of that is there any documentation of her taking a second mate?
No, there is no documentation of us taking a second mate. So, for example, if this Mary the prophetess was all by herself, she was a standing figure. So, what freestanding figure, so to speak.
Right.
So, I think that what could happen it is that she went from the Holy Land to Alexandria, and then either from Alexandria or she went back to the Holy Land, because what the Golden Legend says, the one that she went to southern France says. It is that she was captured in the Holy Land. So maybe she went back for a visit or whatever.
Right.
And she, Lazarus, Sidonius, which is some kind of biblical person that was healed by Jesus, and some other people were thrown together into a boat without
Mhm.
sails,
Mhm.
hoping, that they are going to drown in the Mediterranean Sea. Mind you, it is a medieval story, so we don't know whether they're just trying to embellish it,
Right.
And instead of drowning, they arrived at the shore, at the shores of Marseille, near Marseille, and it's really because it really confirms the Gnostic story where she is considered the top disciple of Jesus, with
Right.
whom he shared the esoteric teachings.
Right.
He didn't share with all of his disciples,
Right.
because the Gnostics believe that he gave the simple teachings, the ones that are in the regulated Bible, to the simple fishermen around the Sea of Galilee. Now, the second level of teachings he gave to his disciples because they had the privilege of being around him and he could explain things.
Right.
And the third highest level of teachings, there are two schools of thought. He gave to Mary Magdalene, or some people say Mary Magdalene and John, who were his top disciples. So this is what the Gnostics believe. So apparently when Mary Magdalene and her companions arrived in Marseille, she astonished people with her erudition and beauty. Okay, so she definitely was not this poor prostitute, the whole story, medieval story that we were given at the beginning. And she started teaching. But then she decided that she doesn't want to do teaching, that she's done with this. And she retired into a cave for 30 years where she prayed and meditated until she died. So this is the French tradition, really, from a Catholic point of view.
Right.
Okay, from the Catholic point of view, and people still go there, on pilgrimages. I know even a person who is, leading the groups and so on. And it is a very long-standing tradition, from a Catholic point of view.
Right.
The second version is, which was actually propagated by Margaret Starbert in her famous book, Woman with an Alabaster Jar. She said that Mary Magdalene had a child with Jesus and her name was Sarah. Now, I know that people love this story, but can I elaborate a little bit on this?
Please.
Because I really, admire Margaret Starbert, but I think there are some issues there. First of all, if you look into the story, she says they had a child called Sarah. So according to the legend that is quite ancient, Sarah was not a child. Sarah was the gypsy tribeswoman or shamanic leader who saw Mary Magdalene and her companions approaching the shores of Marseille, and she welcomed them. And in fact, to this very day, gypsies come every year to this place near Marseille to celebrate the Black Madonna called Sarah. So, so it's not likely that she was the child of Mary Magdalene, because according to that story, she was that tribeswoman who welcomed Mary Magdalene on the shore.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So, however, there is a tradition that is somehow connected to Knights Templar that Mary Magdalene had a child with Jesus and that it was a girl, except that her name was Tamar. And in fact, so there is this tradition that they had a relationship, possibly a child. But my only kind of correction on that story is that her name probably was not Sarah, because there's a pretty good evidence that Sarah was a completely different person.
Right. And that's the story I know from the Romney tradition, is that no, that was the leader of the tribe that is also the seer and the watcher, and brought the ship in.
Yeah.
And then began helping him. Now, what's even more interesting, have you dug into the legend of her crypt? Of Mary Magdalene's crypt yet?
No, I didn't know actually. I mean, in France?
Yes.
Yeah. So, so I will tell you what I know about it, but I didn't get into this very much, because that story I just included in The Other Goddess because it's a very popular story. I put some corrections into the story, but I have some issues with it, so we can discuss it if you want. But what I know about the crypt, it is that they do believe, and for example, I know a very good guide who is a very well-informed lecturer who is guiding people to the crypt and so on. they have what they believe relics of a first century woman, and they believe it is Mary Magdalene.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, and I think it was just a few years ago, National Geographic, they have a skull of this woman.
Mm-hmm.
So they confirmed that that is a skull of a first century woman. Now, whether it's Mary Magdalene, we'll never know, right? Because we don't have a DNA sample or anything. And they did a 3D kind of version of this. So we actually, and you can even Google it on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So we know how this woman look like, based on the 3D, projection of her skull. So there is something there, and if there is such a long-standing tradition, there is usually something to that. However, this is not a full story about the France, because everybody is focusing on this particular story, the Golden Legend. But in the other goddess, I also looked in the west part of France, where the heretics called the Cathars, maybe you heard about them, lived. And they were completely destroyed by the church. They were all burned at the stake. It's a very sad story. They were slaughtered. There's a long war. And they believed, and we know it on the account of actually of a Dominican monk who was torturing them, that he got out of one of his people that he was torturing, but they did believe that Mary Magdalene and Jesus were in a relationship, and that Mary Magdalene was almost equally gifted spiritual teacher. And that's why the Cathars, as Jesus, and that's why the Cathars were and that's why also the church didn't like them, were ordaining women to the highest, level. So women were also preachers in this tradition, because they were honoring Mary Magdalene as Jesus's partner, but not just as his wife, the woman who gave him a child, but as a spiritual teacher.
Right.
Which I like, because I have nothing against motherhood, I have family and so on. But I mean, like, sometimes it feels to me that you can be accepted only if you are like in this traditional setup, husband, wife, mother, father. What if they had a different relationship, have a child, didn't have a child, they were both spiritual teachers?
Right. They were both spiritual teachers. There's high evidence of that. There's high evidence that there was at least something going on there, in general. And what I find interesting, and what gets me when I start digging into this, and I'm talking pre-France legend, is if we look at it, Jesus was supposedly 33. By that time, he would have, by Jewish tradition, been expected to, even as a teacher, to have a wife, to have a connection there. By that time, it would have been expected for him to have other parts of his life. The other part is how the traditional Catholic Church has demonized Mary Magdalene so greatly, it's ridiculous. I mean, she has been edited out of the Bible, like many female characters. She has her little story, and then she's edited out. It's like the mother of Jesus is almost totally edited out of the Gospels, except how he got there and how he left. There is no other conversation. And I think about my mother and how much I have interaction with her, and I'm like, really?
I know. So the reason, part of the reason, why I got interested in Mary Magdalene, it is because she was so demonized, by the Catholic Church. And I will just tell you something. Like, I went to Jerusalem, and in different churches, where Mary Magdalene is many churches, but always as this harlot, and there are like broken chains by him. They said, because broken chains are a symbol for a harlot. And I said, no. From a spiritual point of view, broken chains symbolize liberation, spiritual liberation. I am free now from the delusions of the ego, from all other things that limit me, right? So I think, why are they even lie about stuff like that? What does it have to do? They said that the fragrant oils, are about, because she was doing some kinky stuff, with her customers and so on. No, it was about anointing Jesus, right? So they're demonizing her in such a unintelligent way, actually, so that's why. And then when I was in Jerusalem also, I saw this beautiful painting of Mary Magdalene with her hand extended, and it reminded me of many other symbolisms of previous goddesses in Western culture and also in Hindu culture. But let's focus on Western culture now, such as, like goddess Nimna, which is from Sumer, 4,500 years ago, goddess Inanna, goddess Isis, and they are portrayed with the same symbolism, each of them carrying great wisdom, and each of them being a portal between death and life. And the same symbolism in each of them,
Right.
which was only corrupt later because of a misogyny of the times, or perhaps I'm arguing in the other goddess, she had a gift of some particular secret knowledge for us that somebody doesn't want to know about it, because they want to control us.
Well, I agree. I also find it interesting, and I don't remember which gospel has it, but it's letters from Paul to Mary Magdalene and the return. I find those interesting because they encap the letters that Paul wrote, but remove the letters that Mary Magdalene wrote that talked more so of the spiritual side of it, of the spiritual growth of it, of the spiritual independence of it, and of also the continuation of the movement. Because at this time, it wasn't a religion, it was either a cult or a movement, depending on who you look at. I also find it interesting that we do not, in the standard gospels, have remarks of worship or how they worshiped. But the Gnostic gospels have very detailed instructions that do not fit any current Catholic or any other doctrines behaviors of worship. What do you find in that?
Yeah, that's true. And also, what the most important part of Gnostics was, and that's why they were not included, the Gospels was not included in the Bible, is that they said that Gnosis is the most important thing. Gnosis is basically your divine spark, which goes well with your previous talk with Zen, which means it's your inner spiritual experience that counts. You don't need priests. You don't need the hierarchy of a church. So who wants a religion like that, right? Because there is no institution to build. Like, you can follow your own spiritual experience, right? The divine knowledge is within you.
Right.
And if you have this realization, why do you need, how do you build institution around it? It's very difficult, right? So it was completely useless for the emperor.
Right. Well, not only was it completely useless for the emperor, but it was also completely useless for the the word escapes me, bishops. We'll call them bishops for now, but they were called something else at the time.
Yeah, that's
because
right.
there was no talk of tithing, of control of the church, of control of the popes. Like, the governmental system was not built until first century AD. Well, actually, first century, second century AD is when the church became a state organization.
That's right. And can I just elaborate on what you said about Paul? It is quite interesting because recently I was giving a interview for a very scholarly, very Bible-oriented podcast, and they were asking me where is the evidence in the Gospels and so on. And I said, it's very interesting that you ask for it. First of all, you remove all evidence, and then you say there is no evidence, right? So, I mean, you selected what goes there, and then you removed what you didn't like, and then 2,000 years later, you say, proof, that there was something there. And by the way, if I say, well, it is actually there in the Gnostic Gospels, you say, oh, but they are not canonical Gospels. So, I mean, first of all, you remove the evidence, and if you bring evidence from outside of the Gospels, it is not acceptable. So then you cannot prove, you cannot win this argument, right?
Well, what I find interesting, and I don't know if you're familiar with the 1946 Project.
No, I don't.
Okay. The 1946 Project is where the word homosexual wasn't entered into the Bible until 1946's new revival of the Bible. Because every so often they have to update it for language.
Yeah.
And they're now proving that there are multiple misconceptions and multiple mistranslations occurring in the current Bible that occurred in 1946. Now, these documents were discovered in 1945. Okay, and we're into regulations in 1945.
Yeah.
What I find interesting is they were still in translation at the time they were reviewing the text of the Gospels and re-entering and changing the wording of the Bible.
Yes, because they have to correct. They have to correct. So because they want it in a particular way, and otherwise all their belief system was falls apart. But do you believe a person like Jesus or even Mary Magdalene, they would have anything against anyone? That they would care, for anybody's sexual orientation or anything? I mean, that's why he was disdained by many people, because he was, didn't care about any of the stuff. Right?
But they didn't have a clue that it was like, so you're telling me you have red hair? Okay, that's nice.
Yeah, that's right. I know. But by the way, can I just suggest there is this scholar from North Carolina, from Texas, Rice University, Jeff Kripal, who is talking about stuff that we were just talking about, so you may maybe even talk to him, right? Because
I'm hoping to. I'm actually been trying to contact and been in, trying to reach them because they're busy putting this project together. It's about ready to go out. And you know how that is, trying to get into that world. I'm sure you had all, podcasters and people knocking you door and going, hey, come talk about it. And you're like, no, I'm still editing the third series of this.
Yeah, I know. But that's why, I call myself primarily a spiritual detective, although I'm also a scholar and, and a writer, simply because, I'm looking into these things. But the reason why I looked into Mary Magdalene and also, esoteric traditions of Hinduism and Tantra, because they're aligned with this. And I thought the whole idea of sexuality was misrepresented in all institutional religions, whatever the form of sexuality. And in esoteric traditions, sexuality is treated as one, not but one of the pathways actually to spiritual enlightenment and experiencing divine consciousness. But for some reason, like Mary Magdalene, it was written off. You cannot look there, right? You're just not allowed even to look there.
Well, what I'm wondering is, did you go back into the older, because there's currently 26 versions of the Bible, of the current Bible. Did you go back and look into the older traditions and see when it was edited, when she became the devil?
Yes. So actually, she didn't become Mary Magdalene, you mean, right?
Yes.
So that's a fantastic question. Thank you that you asked this. Actually, she didn't become the devil until the 6th century, believe it or not, when in 591 AD, Pope Gregory I, in homily 33, made a scriptural mistake and equated her with the woman sinner from the Bible. And there is no evidence that Mary Magdalene was the nameless woman. She's unnamed woman from the Bible. Plus, this unnamed woman from the Bible was not a prostitute either. And how can you tell you linguistic proof for this? Because prostitute in Greek, and it was written in Greek originally, the Bible, is porn. The word porn, which is prostitute, was not used even once in the Bible. Okay, the woman who was called the sinner, which is word harmatalos, is called the sinner, and it means she broke a law, Jewish law, and it could be like anything. She maybe didn't pay her taxes. Not only this, there is no visible connection between her, because she has no name, and Mary Magdalene. So there is no reason, but the Pope decided, that it is her and that she was a prostitute. And in 1969, the Catholic Church, admitted that there's actually no proof for this, but who knows about it, right? Another part is that there could be maybe a more innocent mistake. I'm not sure if I'm buying into this, but I did my research, and in the 4th century, which means 3 centuries after Mary Magdalene, there was an Egyptian woman who was a prostitute, whose name was Mary, who heard about Jesus' teachings, converted to Christianity and went to the Holy Land. So I think that perhaps what happened in the medieval mind, they were not strict on facts then. They thought, oh, Mary, the same Mary. But
Right.
it was 300 years later.
Yeah, and that's the other thing is we're dealing with a name that was as common today as very common names and no last name. It was
That's
just
right.
location.
That's
You know,
right.
that's why Mary and Alexander
Yeah.
had 3 different names.
That's right. So I think it was the scholar, I think, who proved that if you, and the same Yeshua, which is Jesus, it's also quite a common name. So I know that, that Mary, I think, something like 35%, I don't want to make the number, 35 or 45% of women were called Miriam, which is Mary, translated as
Right.
Mary, at that time in the 1st century. So, it was easy to conflate. However, I say, is it really innocent since she was completely written off, disregarded, called a harlot, and in fact she perhaps has some message for us. This is what I'm talking about, and I talk about feminine consciousness. I'm not talking here about gender. Okay, I want to make it clear. I'm talking about it in Jungian sense. By Jungian, I'm Carl Jung, the Swiss psychoanalyst, who said both women and men have masculine and feminine aspects of them. Masculine aspect was called animus, and feminine aspect is anima. So, it's just a different ratio in different people, right?
Right.
So this is what I mean. And at the end of the other goddess, I say we have to really look into this wisdom, which is the anima wisdom, the goddess consciousness, right? Because we are going in a completely wrong direction in our civilization. Look, the masculine intelligence gave us cars, medicine and rockets and stuff. But now they want to inject us with neural links and so on, right? Like they turn us into machines. Yeah, this is what I mean. Then I think what we need, if we want to evolve spiritually as species, we have to work on our anima, our feminine intelligence that is different and was repressed for at least 2,000 years or more. So I think we have to look there. And I just, in the other goddess, I use Mary Magdalene as a sample study, so to speak, right?
Well, it's not only that, but she is one of the characters of the Bible that has gotten a bum rap.
Yeah. And why? Why?
Well, it was because she was a pivotal figure in, I think, the original, like the curiatrics of life. She was probably one of the most devoted disciples, but she would have challenged John and Paul both in their leadership for the Catholic Church.
So that's a very interesting story that you touched upon, because in Gnostic documents, it's usually Peter who challenges Mary Magdalene, who is the founder apparently of Christianity, after Jesus. Because so Gnostics were quite naughty here, because in almost every single document, I will give you an example. One of the Gnostics documents, Pistis Sophia, it is a Q&A between Jesus and his disciples, basically. There are 42 questions asked, and out of his 42 questions, 39 are asked by Mary Magdalene. And Jesus answers the questions. And at the end, here and also in the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, Peter says, why do you even bother talking to her? What is she talking about? First of all, he doesn't understand any of the questions she asks.
Right.
Because he was not as initiated as she was, possibly. And the other one is he asked Jesus, why do you even bother talking to her? Why, you accept her here? And Jesus says, Peter, leave her alone, because she is infused with the Spirit. So in Gnostic documents, she is the leading figure, and Peter is basically angry all the time that she's getting the lead.
Well, not only that, but that she's leading the class and having her bond. And I have a weird theory, and you're probably going to drop your mouth, but I really think there was a level of jealousy, and I'm talking more in a relationship-based jealousy with Peter and Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
And he basically won out because at the time, the masculine energy was being very proficient. This is also when women were losing the rights to own property, when women were losing the rights of independence. Constantine was making wide sweeping changes because in the society at that time, Women were their own independents. They could negotiate and own their own
Mhm.
property. Even when they married, they still maintained their
Mm.
property. Whatever
Mm.
that property was theirs. And would inherit their husbands if she chose to divorce. Oh my God, Christianity, there was actually previously divorced. Yes, she would actually take half the husband's, but the husband could not take any of hers.
Yeah. So that's very, you've done a really good research, because it's actually true. Because some people say, why did it happen to Mary Magdalene and so on? And there is a very good case here that the whole educational system at that time and the women's rights were, diminished completely. Suddenly women, there are all of these kind of movements in society, right? Like there
Right.
is restriction, there are rights when there are no rights and so on. So in this stage, around 2nd century or so, women started to really lose out, during in the Roman Empire. So that can be part of a process, kind of legal process that was going on so in the society of the time, right?
Right.
As well. So that it could be part of the reason also why. But still, I still think that Mary Magdalene was somehow consciously hijacked, and there is more into this.
Oh, I think that she was continually hijacked. I think even that some of the gospels that are attributed to Peter was
Mm.
not his original idea, because that's
Mhm.
why they're so so many gaps within the whole of the story.
Mm.
And a lot of scholars attribute it to, well, it's just been lost in time. No, it's because he's telling it third hand, and
Yeah,
he didn't get the full story because he wasn't there.
that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we know, and for example, we know that Paul was never there, right? Because he
Right.
came later. He was not a disciple, so he was just trying to figure out basically what's going on.
Right. And we also know that the current gospels that are being taught were wrote anywhere from 30 to 75 years after the apostles' death.
That's true. That's true. So, and we don't know it. So, we don't know exactly when they were written, but it's not like when I was growing up as a little girl, I thought, oh, like Mark wrote it. But no, was attributed to Mark, which was how it was done, at that time, right? When it was, so it means a disciple of a disciple wrote, about the first original teacher, and whatever they remembered and whatever they understood from the teachings, like. So so that's why it is like that there are so many gaps and inconsistencies, really, because it is generations, sometimes 2-3 generations after, and people try to they have good intentions often because they think we need to preserve the teachings, but also like us, we're talking about it, they were enculturated, they were brainwashed by their beliefs and so on. And I can easily say like, oh no, this is, you cannot say because it says like, oh, maybe there's homosexuality here, or here is a woman here, we have to remove it because people are not ready for that. You know what I mean? They just edit it out.
Wrong.
Yeah.
But now I find it interesting when we get to Gnostic scriptures, and I have studied a lot of Gnostic scriptures. I came up, part of my training was a lot with Sylvia, not with Sylvia Brown, but a lot of her educational stuff was part of my training. So I'm very interested in a lot of the Gnostic stuff. What I find interesting, the difference between the two, when I look at both books that are written on the same subject, is yours is more factually researched, where hers was more spiritually thought.
That's right.
On the same level, about the same person.
That's right. Because, as Gnostic said, she got the different level of teaching, the more spiritual, esoteric level of teaching. It wasn't about, first this happened, then that happened. It was about spiritual, actual, knowledge, rather not what Jesus went here, Jesus went there, right?
Right. Jesus done this, Jesus done that. Heart loves Joe, you can, but understand that I'll be doing, if it's a reading question, I need your birth date, and I'll be doing that in a little bit of the show towards the end. Okay, Heart Love? But no, with your book, I find it very interesting that you've gone back and you've done some research. You've delved into this world of Gnostic Gospels. We're just now getting translations. Now, granted, this was found back in the 60s and 70s. Why do you think it's taken so long for it to make it to press, and it takes people like you to sit down and go pry it out of the Vatican
Because, actually that story may be very trivial. We live in such a strange civilization. So they were discovered, and then different governments started to fight with Egypt, with other governments started to fight to whom this discovery actually belongs. Can they be actually taken out of Egypt? So one gospel, was actually smuggled out of Egypt and got into Carl Jung in Switzerland. He paid for it, illegally. And then different universities started to fight about the right who can store this, so there are legal battles. And then eventually somebody found it, some professor decided, okay, I know some Coptic or I know some Greek, I'll start to translate it. And the original translations were actually quite awful, which means they are really literal. So, it's difficult to understand what's going on there.
Mm-hmm.
So then he took another layer of scholars, and my favorite scholar is actually French scholar Jean-Yves Leloup, who was a former Catholic priest, and now he's an Eastern Orthodox, I think Greek Orthodox priest, because he wanted to get married, and
Right.
he believed the whole thing is ridiculous about celibacy and so on. So, and he translated the Gospel of Mary Magdalene and Gospel of Philip, but especially Gospel of Mary Magdalene, in a way that actually gives the spiritual truth of that.
Right.
Okay. So it is immensely long process, and even like from a legal point of view, it is a little bit, I don't know if you're aware about the controversy about the Egyptian pyramids. Like there are so many theories about it, that they're actually much older than the archaeologists say, that, there are pyramids around the world, and, apparently the Egyptian government would just not allow even other scientists to go there, to prove that it's not a tomb of a pharaoh, but it was some kind of healing device. There are so many alternative
power plant.
Then power plant, exactly. But they are just not allowed to go there.
Right. It's like they're not allowed to.
Yeah.
Right. It's like one of my mentors, Edgar Casey. He made a prediction very long time ago that there was a library below the Sphinx.
Yeah.
That was
Under
a
the
jackal.
Yeah.
That was a jackal, not a lion with a body. He made the prediction, and it was supposed to be discovered in 1990. Well, they found it, but the Egyptian government refuses to allow them to access that area.
Yes, that's right. And there are lots of alternative, but researchers who had different theories that it is aligned with Orion and so on, and they are and actually they were proven right, because he took it to court. I forgot the name of his name. This Egyptian man who did it. He's an engineer, and I think he lives in London. And and he had to get an apology in the major newspapers of London, because his name was. And then, but if you go on Wikipedia, he's still just apparently some wacky guy, So it means they are just completely. So the same is going on with Gnostic Gospels, basically, right? So they're just not going to acknowledge it. Although I think we are making a progress here. So what I like, for example, this guy Jean-Yves Leloup, he says, why don't we read them together, as you said?
Yeah.
Why arguing? Why does it have to be this or that? Since they were all written, by people who benefited from the teachings, and I agree with him, because I say, I go with my spiritual experience. Which one nourishes me? I will take the one that nourishes me spiritually at the moment. I'm not going to worry whether, Constantine the Great liked this, or not.
It fit his agenda to unify his Rome that was already collapsing over the spiritual divide. It's like when I teach Wicca classes, I tell my students, write down everything. Write down every spell you do, write down keep a journal. And here is why. In my viewpoint, 1954 is when Wicca became legal. We have the High Magic's Aid, which comes out by Gerald Gardner, that opens up the path for Wicca, even though it has threads back to the past. So we are technically in that same time period that the Gospel of Mary Magdalene is occurring in that religion. Wicca is occurring in this religion. There may one day be the Gospel of Blackthorn that is your telling of your life. And this is why I think, as a spiritual person, it's so important to journal, because in 2,000 years, someone may find a hard drive buried in the back of what they think is a landfill, and then figure out how to operate it and go, well, that's an interesting way to see the Christmas holiday, but I never saw it that way.
That's right. And I would just make a connection between the Wicca, Mary Magdalene, and Isis, because in the other goddess, I make a connection between Isis and Mary Magdalene, because of symbolism and similar story, and one with resurrection. But what happened to Isis is that, she became, from this kind of very sexual goddess, she became the mother goddess eventually when the Roman Empire took over, right? And then she was accepted as the mother of Osiris, of Horus, and the wife of Osiris, right, whom she resurrected. But people forgot, because it was removed from her image to make it more clean, so to speak, that she was a goddess of high magic as well. So this knowledge of high magic later went into to European magic tradition, which later was revived by the Wicca traditions, which is another connection of Isis / Mary Magdalene.
Well, actually, no, both. Technically, right now, because you will have Christo-pagan practitioners that will call and use Mary Magdalene the same way a Egyptian practitioner would call on Isis. What I find also interesting is, if she was in Alexandria, then she would have been exposed to the original teachings of Isis from the temple, from the priest and temple priestesses that fled from Egypt, from Egypt, during the Roman occupation with Cleopatra and Mark Antony.
Yeah, and actually in the other goddess, when I talk about the connection between therapeutai, I have this kind of about Mary Magdalene, because the philosophers, which I believe she joined in Alexandria, were connected to the temple of Isis. Right. So I have this kind of semi-fictional part there when I say, like, she's actually going to the temple, because there's certainly a connection. And it also, in many visionaries had a connection between Isis and Mary Magdalene and so on. So it's definitely something going on there.
Yeah. Well, not only that, but I think there is a good connection there, because I'll be really honest and blunt about it. If we look at, the bigger cities of Rome, there would have been temples as much as the Americans have fast food joints, one on every street corner. So they would have intermeshed, they would have shared information. And, philosophers from all areas would have done a large exchange there. That's why Alexandria was so important to be destroyed.
Yes, that's right. And they did, right? So the Library of Alexandria, and so on. So when it was destroyed. So it is a fascinating story. That's why I thought, I spent many years doing this, and that's why I put it into this one book, so I have it like for myself even. Okay, so it's in one piece now.
Which is an easy read. Is there plans for it to go into Audible?
Possibly. I will have to, because it was just released a couple of months ago, so I'm going to speak to my publisher about it. I have some good news about it, though, that the other goddess is being now currently translated into Mandarin. So
cool.
It's pretty cool. I never even dream about it, and I got a message from my publisher. Oh, I have some good news. I was contacted by a publisher, and it's being translated into Mandarin. So I would love if it went to personally to Audible. So because it is an easy access for people, and it was an intention, if you don't mind me mentioning it, that as an entertaining read. Okay, so it's not an academic book. I made this conscious decision that it's a nice read. That it reads nicely.
It is on Kindle.
And I don't put references. I just put a reference list at the end. So if you want to find more information, you can, look into the sources I used. But I didn't want to annotate it every second sentence, because it makes it for a lousy read,
I agree. Thank you for doing that. But this is a good jumping point for someone that's wanting to really connect within this energy, within this thought theory, is to jump in here, because this is an entertaining read. It took me about a week. Now, granted, I read it for 3 reasons. One, I could chew this stuff up all day long. Like, if we went back to Alexandrian times, I would be sitting there debating with her
I know.
on chemical theory of spirituality, but that's a different thing. But no, when your publisher connected with me, I'm like, oh yeah, this is gonna be a good show.
Thank you. And it was an enjoyable process, so it also says something about it, the opening. Yeah, so that Zen was talking about, and I hope that the readers will have this enjoyable also read, rather than painstakingly, like suffering through something. No, I don't want it. Yeah.
Right. And I really appreciate you sticking to truth, because there's enough fantasy fictional art out there about this lady. I mean, Dan Brown done a lovely fictional Carrie of Mary Magdalene.
Yeah.
You portrayed Romney and a lot of the Romney story very well in it, and the Black Madonna. That was very inspirational and powerful. So what's next? What's our next book? Who are we taking on?
I don't know, because I just finished this one. So at this moment, I'm just enjoying doing what I'm doing with you right now, because I do lots of interviews, and I am in this wonderful space of complete opening and unknowing, so I will see what comes next, because this book, maybe not even in a form of a book like The Other Goddess, but just as a process, was such a great passion and fascination for me, that at least since 2005, when I was pretty much 100% committed to this, that now I am just open to what's going to happen next, so
I don't know. I think I'd be interested to see you take on the Legend of Kuan Yin.
Oh, perhaps, who knows, like there are all of these ideas floating around me at the moment, and I say, and it's very uncharacteristic for me, because I usually grab ideas. And I think, let's say, let's see what really sticks, to me, right? What is it that really sticks around and that I'm really fired up again, about?
Because you have to be fired up to write.
Yeah, you do, because it is a huge commitment, and it's also a great pleasure. So I am actually in the state of complete openness. I think maybe goddess consciousness, but it's just maybe. At the moment, I'm just maybe for the first time truly in my life, completely in the now. And this is when the best things happen, right?
Very much so. All right, darling. Well, thank you for stopping by. Come back when your next book comes out, or you're doing something more exciting. I'd love to have a cup of coffee and go into it a little bit more. All right, guys, let's take a sip, and we'll be back with Joe and questions. Hi, I'm Aeson Knight. I provide tarot readings covering everything from love and relationships to your life questions and your most spiritual answers. And also, I provide a lot of guidance in finances and divorces and all those relationship problems. So, if you'd like to get a reading from me privately, not on air, you can feel free to do so by visiting aesonknight.com and booking your appointment. I also provide on-demand services, so if your life is a little chaotic, you can go ahead and click that Call Now button there on my site. It'll connect you to Keen, and if you've not been with Keen before, you'll get 3 free minutes to talk with me, so that's great for a quick answer question. All right, guys, back to the show. Enjoy. Bye, y'all. Hello, darling.
Hello.
Yes, I've had some awesome guests. What'd you think?
Awesome guess. Very awesome guess. I still can't believe you thought a yield sign was yellow and black.
I swear it's yellow and black.
No, she said that, and my brain just immediately went red and white, and then I heard you say yellow and black, and I was like, is he on something? I was like, he did not just say that.
I don't think West Virginia got the update. I really don't, because as we're taking the invisible assistant to work, there is a yield sign there.
You're talking about which one are you talking about? Are you talking about the one on 19 at the top of the, turning off into there?
No, the one coming down Main Street across the bridge, because I don't do 19, because there's no reason to rev up my engine and waste that amount of gas.
Okay.
Turning from Main Street into the Shamrock right there. There's a yield sign, and
Yeah.
I swear it's yellow.
It's red and white.
Okay.
I swear to God, it's yellow or it's red and white. Sorry, you said yellow too many times. Now I'm going to start saying it.
Uh-huh.
But
I
yeah,
just thought it was
no, I
yellow,
was
too.
just like, my brain exploded when you said that. I was like, what is he on? And then she
Gasoline.
explained it, and I was like, oh my God.
Gasoline,
was like-
that's what I'm on.
Well, you know, like at this point, it is actually, I swear to God, I think gas has actually gotten more expensive than drugs at this point. So that's a consideration.
Well, no, you made my coffee. You always make it like gasoline, which is what I needed. I needed some vibrational energy from caffeine tonight to take on these two authors. I love talking to both of them. They were amazing. Listening to them, especially Dr. Joanna.
Mm-hmm.
You've seen me carry this book around. You've seen it. Like, I'm surprised it stayed together. I try to keep them nice. I really do. But I've got in my Sylvia collection, which is on my Kindle, I've got the other one, and I was comparing the two, and the information was just amazing.
Oh, wow.
By the way, this is on Kindle, guys, and she's got it on sale according to Kindle. It is on sale for $8.99 if you want to go and get it. I do believe it's part of Kindle Unlimited. They do have the what's called WordWise. It's where they actually it'll read to you if you're more of a reader until she gets it up on Audible. But it's not a backbreaking book either. So she's done really amazing. Make sure to go get that. Check out Soul Academy. That one sounds interesting. I may go and play with that.
Oh, let me take care of this real quick.
Okay, you take care of that. We do have a question, so I'm going to heat up my black deck.
Okay. And I will be ready for that one in just 1 second.
Awesome.
I'm going to scroll back up there. There we go.
I blue dotted it for you.
You did, but I always like to actually scroll to it in case there's like other stuff around it.
Okay.
Because sometimes other stuff comes in or there's additional parts and like it gets like, especially when you're dropping links, like it's really, and I've done it. Like where it's just like, what do you mean there was another part to that?
Yeah.
So Heart's Love, 4/18/2000. Do you see my friend Jay coming to visit me soon? I feel he is planning to tell me something. And hey, Brenda.
Hi, Brenda.
Who also thought it was yellow.
That's okay. We had a problem earlier today, and we'll talk about that since I didn't pull any news stories.
Oh, okay, cool.
Well, we have the Two of Cups here, which shows a bonding and a friendship, followed by what's interesting is the Death card, and you're going to go, oh my goodness, but the World card, which shows more of an ending of a cycle, ending of a problem. So yes, I do think he comes to see you soon, and I feel like that he's going to be wanting to tell you something that takes you up a normal, take you up another level. The connection there in general. With the Emperor here, it's taking a more formal step. Okay, so there's that. So earlier today, you were testing a CD player.
Yes, I was.
So he comes into my office and he pulls out this thing that I think is just like programmed CDs, whatever. Aeson doesn't go through crap because he doesn't care.
You know, it's one of those things though. Like let's tell the whole story though. So your mom, was now like this is how bad this has gotten music wise. Your mom got handed a CD by a friend of hers. It's like their mixtape or their demo. And she wanted to listen to that, but then she suddenly realized I don't have a CD player.
Mm-hmm.
So she goes out, she buys this little, inexpensive CD player, and she gets it home, and she is trying everything to make it work and cannot make it work. So she, of course, sends it to me. And I'm sitting here and I pull it out of the box and, I turn it on. I finally, I look at it, figure out where all the buttons are, and how does this work? Okay, cool. Got it. Now I just need a CD, make sure it's not broken, that the CD part actually works. And my brain froze as I went, where the hell are my CDs? Did I throw them out? Because I haven't had to grab a CD in forever. I like YouTube Music, Spotify, Google Play, you name the digital, I use it. I have not touched a CD to listen to music in so long. I struggled with this because I was like, where the hell are my CDs? And then it finally dawns on me, well, they've got to be, maybe they're in your office, still back there in the shelf behind you. So I go in, sure enough, I immediately see the CD cases because I've had them for 20-some years. There are CDs in there that are 30 years old and still play. I have, one of those is actually one of the first CDs I ever got. My mom bought it when she bought me the stereo with the CD player.
Mm-hmm.
I've kept my stuff. I've kept it, they still play. But I had a whole moment there. Anyway, so yeah, go on.
Anyway, so he goes, he does the testing, all that. He hands, and and I'm picky about his stuff. Because he just comes in, opens the thing, pulls out a CD. I look at him and says, zip that back up. And he just shuts it and puts it back in there. Whatever. I'll zip it up when I put it up. And I'm like,
yeah.
No. But fine. So
I've never been gentle with, I have not been gentle with those cases. Those cases have gone through hell.
Until they enter my office.
Well, no, they're indestructible.
Uh-huh.
I bought these in 2000.
Mm-hmm.
I swear to God, I'm not joking when I say they're 22 years old.
Mm-hmm.
They've been through everything. They have been moved. They have been thrown. They have been left open. They have been left in cars. They have done things. They have seen things. They probably need an addiction at this point to take care of the trauma. I have never been gentle with those CD cases. So you standing there looking at me oh, you need to zip that back up. And I'm like, whatever.
Uh-huh. So anyway, I got to put away his CD and I'm looking for the place that it goes. Because CDs get organized by artists in order of production.
No.
Human nature.
No. They actually probably got loaded in. Well, no, they're not even in that order. I think they're literally loaded in by frequency I used to listen to them. I put all the stuff I listen to in the front. There's two cases, by the way. They're identical almost. But yeah, one has they're basically in order of when I listened to them last.
Mm-hmm.
They used to get rearranged, as stuff fell down. To tell you how long it's been, pull it.
I'm even more scared to do this.
Pull it. Yeah, they're nasty. They're horrible. They've been through hell. But what's on that first page? Because the one you put the CD back in was the one that that's the primary.
All right, Mission Impossible, Super Box of Rock, Oldies, and NSYNC.
Yes. See, Brenda's CDs went in whatever space was open in the case. But now that Super Box of Rock Oldies,
no,
was
the different ones.
Oh, well, okay, but it's the teal and CD metallic.
Right.
Right. That one was, there should be 2 of them, I think.
Try 3.
3. Okay. I couldn't remember. Like, one of them's totally useless. There's nothing really good on it. But the other 2, but that 3-pack was the first, like, CD my mom got me. It was that, and there's another one in there she got me at the same time. It was a very confusing birthday.
Classic movies?
Yes! I love that one.
Okay, this isn't the section that scared me. I expected AI soundtrack is interesting.
Oh my god, that soundtrack is amazing.
Okay, so again, I think because of the CD he chose,
I just flipped it open randomly and went, sure, I'll put up with that.
mystical chance, it would go in C.
Now that one I pointed out because like I saw it while I was grabbing the other one. But I saw that one because I just seen the meme the other day about, do you remember that point in the 90s where everyone got into Gregorian chant?
Mm-hmm.
And it like it's always posted as, and you don't know whether or not we're joking. We're not joking. There was a month in the 90s. The world decided Gregorian chant was a thing that we wanted to listen to, including me.
Well, what scared me more so is, so I'm flipping through and I go through the Brethren, the 5-set Brethren box set.
I don't even remember that one.
The Best of the Disco.
Oh, yeah.
And then Nothing. And I'm like, okay, where does this go? Because there's no place in C, so maybe he filed it on M's. There's nothing on M. I have to go and flip back through this to find out where the hell this went, because as normal, it's disorganized. It's my husband. I should have known it would have been disorganized.
Yeah, no, that's the primary one. That must have been, because see, at one point you were right. It did have software in it.
Yeah.
Like, but I went through at one point and just like trashed a ton of software because I was like, I'm done.
Right.
Like, these programs are so damn old.
Music that scares me. The United States Air Force Band of Fight.
Yes, that is a really phenomenal CD.
Broadway in Concert.
Yes.
Titanic, the soundtrack.
Which was the one I used to test your mother's CD player.
No.
Yes, it was. I used Titanic.
Okay. Willard Al Yankovic.
Yes. Is that Running with Scissors? It should be Running with Scissors.
I don't know. It's in the wrong place. And it's not labeled. It's just his face.
I think that's Running with Scissors.
Okay. Because again, you didn't keep the CD case. You did not keep the album art. You just kept the CD.
I was in college. Like, I reduced everything down. Like, I had to, like, here's the 3 vehicles I had during college. I left West Virginia in a Ford Festiva.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like, I put my shit, which I, like, here's where it began. I put my shit in garbage bags into the back of a Ford Festiva. That's where I left West Virginia at. Okay, then the next vehicle was a Mercury Topaz. I will tell you right now, that car had the dumbest trunk known to humanity. Like, you could put multiple bodies in there if you could fold them like origami.
And they do.
Well, that's a different story.
Okay.
But no, you can't put any large boxes in that car. The doors don't open enough. The trunk doesn't open enough. You can put nothing large in the back of a Mercury Topaz.
Right.
And then the last car was a Ford Escort.
Mm-hmm.
So
now, on to this continued me looking through his music archives going, oh God, Toby Keith. Okay, decent. The Best of the Beatles, The Best of Disco, Superbox Rock, Loretta Lynn, Mystic Chance, Classic Movies, NSYNC.
It was all
I'm
over the
dating
place.
an axe murderer. You guys worry about me killing him if he misses the show. I'm dating an axe murderer.
Oh, Brenda says, God's Joe, your music is as eclectic as mine. It is. It is. Now grab the other one. I may have gotten it backwards then. Like, I liked all my CDs, but I may have it backwards. That may not be the primary. That may be the secondary. Either that or I've just totally, somewhere along the way, just went, screw it. I don't care anymore. I'm just curious. Yeah, I know. It's...
This one's probably the more used one.
Okay. Then, yeah, that's probably the original.
Using Microsoft XS 2000.
Oh, God, no, that is software still.
Joe's Web. I can't say that word on air.
Okay. Yeah, that's all software then, and backups and random.
Norton Rescue.
Oh, yeah. Woo! Is that the paper label one from UNCG?
No.
Oh, wow.
ISB 380. Burn CDs.
Oh, yeah, there's a ton of old backup burns.
Java.
Yes!
Backup 10. Backup 10. Backup 11. Backup 12. 0503.
Hey, at least I labeled my discs.
Yes.
Most of them. Like, I had a roommate who never labeled a single disc ever.
Mm-hmm.
It was the... But he thought he knew what all they were till he handed me that disc of hentai.
Mm-hmm.
That was a moment.
Image
like,
wave. Blanks. Blanks. And blanks.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm dating an axe murderer.
I am married to an axe murderer that will do it to Yellow Bikini. Little Yellow Submarine.
Well, an itsy bitsy teeny weeny yellow polka dot bikini. Either one.
Yeah.
I have had a few labels over the years that I did have to go back and go, what was that again? And then it's this whole moment like, oh my God, that was a thing. I remember it now.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh man.
I, however, label differently than Joe. I'm going to get him used to my labeling system, especially when he does my images. I just need a label of the date it needs to post. Not a date after, not what's in the picture. I just need the date.
Well, yeah, but here's the problem, though.
Uh-huh.
Like, you say this, but I've been doing your astrology stuff, and let me point out there are 33 images.
Uh-huh.
There are 4 retrogrades next month.
Uh-huh.
Like, hold
Brace
on to your
yourself.
ass. Brace yourselves, please. But here's the problem. It's not like there's just like a couple of days that have, like, because there's 31 days in July. But it's not like there's just a couple of days that have like one extra thing.
Uh-huh.
Like, there's like 4 and like 5 events. I think it goes up to like 5 events on one day.
Yeah.
So they have to be labeled.
July
Otherwise,
15th,
it's confusing.
1, July 15th, 2, July 15th,
No.
3. It's
No.
easier for me.
Yeah, it's easier for you. That's fine. You want to rename them, you rename them. I'm not doing it. I need while I'm generating them, make sure that I know what the hell I just did.
I know, but
Because
no,
realize I do this in 3 passes.
I know.
I do the retro because the Photoshop file is just easier
Mm-hmm.
to do the single planet, or single planetary body, single sign as one run. Do one run of the retrogrades, because I have to do a mass change to the file for that. It takes a minute.
Right.
And then go through and do the doubles, the 2 planet, 2 sign conjunction, opposition, whatever it is. So I do 3 runs on that.
Right.
And so when I'm going back through, it can get really confusing.
Right.
Because it's like, no, I got to make sure all these are here.
Right.
Otherwise, like, oops, forgot to tell you about that retrograde.
I always talk about the retrogrades because we need to know how to intake the energy.
This is true.
All right.
But
So, do you have an I'm now the asshole, or are you going to take the mouse's choice?
actually, I think I sent one, didn't I?
I don't know. I can't go in there.
Oh, what do you mean you can't go in there?
It'll ding, 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 ding all over the
Oh,
damn place.
fine.
I haven't been in there today.
Alrighty. Ooh, maybe I did. No, I didn't. Crap. No, I sent 2 other things. They're great stories for Friday, but no, they are not AITAs. So, all right, I'll take the choice. What we got? Like, there's a lot of those.
I know.
There's been some good ones today, too.
Right.
Ooh, is this the one I commented on?
I don't know.
Oh, no, that's not it. Okay, we're safe. Sorry, there was one about stepmoms earlier today, and I was like, yeah, we're going to have a conversation. So am I the asshole for losing it and making my stepmom look bad? I have 2 sons, a 3-year-old and a 4-year-old. I'm a single mom, and their father is practically a deadbeat. Anyways, it was my dad's birthday yesterday, and he invited us. Everything was going really well, and my 3-year-old was sitting on my lap when all of a sudden, my stepmom tried picking him up. I held him down and was like, it's fine, I've got him. But she kept insisting and kept telling me to go take a break. I said I was fine and that I want my baby, but she, being much stronger than I am, lifted him into her arms. I got really frustrated, and I don't know why, but I just got really teary-eyed. My 4-year-old noticed and started to get upset as well, while my 3-year-old became fussy. At this point, I'm begging for her to give him to me, and he's saying he wants me as well. She just kept saying that she's only helping, and she's older than me and knows how to deal with kids and is more responsible, etc., etc. My dad eventually told her to get off her high horse and give me my kid. She did, but was really upset about it and said that I was being a major drama queen and that I should learn to accept her kindness because not everyone is willing to help out young moms these days. I told her that I didn't ask for her help and that I was just fine in that moment, and she told me that I was, quote, too attached to my kids. I called her crazy, and she implied that I'm an asshole for making her look bad and losing it when she was only trying to be kind. I think she needs to understand boundaries, but I may have overreacted, and she may be right. I am extra sensitive emotional these days, too. Am I the asshole? Okay, so there are some edits here.
Okay.
So part 1, I didn't want to include this just in case it took away from my actual problem, but I'm 22. Also, I guess this is relevant info and a few people have asked. My ex often did something similar to what my stepmom did. I didn't realize till much later that my reaction was probably triggered by that. I also split with him very recently, so everything's fresh, which is why I'm so sensitive, irritable. If I'm being vague, I hope you understand. I appreciate all the opinions, and okay, so we'll stop there. All right, so is she the asshole?
No. That's her baby. She gets them at any time she wants.
Not the asshole, mother or stepmother-in-law. Or no, excuse me, stepmother. Wait, no, stepmother. Excuse me. Stepmother is like a mess. Like, you don't yank kids out of people's arms,
Right.
especially not their parents.
Right.
Part one. Part two, like, you're gaslighting her a lot.
Right.
Like, I'm sorry, that was just a lot.
Yeah.
Like, that's a lot of a lot. Like, someone asks you for their kid, you give them their kid. That's just end of discussion. It's over. You're done.
Right. And you need to draw a boundary now, because when they're 16 and she's taken off with them to the beach,
oh yeah,
and they needed to be home because they're grounded, you have an issue.
And no, you didn't make her look bad. Like, she made herself look bad because she was being bad.
Right.
Like, here's the problem when a lot of people say that you're being crazy. Like, that's their go-to for, I feel stupid in this situation because the crazy thing I'm doing is having attention drawn to it, and I have no other defense, so I project that onto someone else.
Right. Which is bullshit.
Mm-hmm.
So, not the asshole, ruled by the court, telling your mother-in-law to leave your child the hell alone. I don't like handling babies to begin with.
Yeah, stepmom.
Yeah. Like, I don't like babies being held to begin with.
Yeah, I think at this point you just invite your dad over and tell him to not bring her.
Exactly. All right, on to relationship advice.
All right, so I, 25 female, am sick to death of having this conversation with my partner, 25 male, but I'm getting ready to have it again. Surprise, surprise, the subject is chores. I'm sure everyone is shocked. My partner has a very difficult time remembering things. This is not his fault, so I'm patient, but he has used up all of my patience. We've been just under 2 years living together for one. Oh, we've been together for just under 2 years living together for one. Everything was fine up until about 4 months ago when I got a new job working from home. Since then, my partner has been slacking with any chores he doesn't find fun or take more than the bare minimum. The only 2 chores he reliably does are laundry, washing, not folding, and cooking. He works a physical labor job and likes to come home and relax for a bit before doing anything. I understand that. I'm physically disabled and I also like taking a bit to rest after doing something strenuous. The problem is, my partner never gets around to actually doing the stuff he says he will. He sits down to relax and watch TV or paint or fuck around on the internet or play video games and do that for 6 or 7 hours. We've had several conversations about this. Like that title says, he asked me to remind him at first, which I did. He still didn't do anything. So the reminders turned into nagging and we started fighting more. I told him I was done reminding him because it didn't help. He told me to start asking him when he's not doing anything. The issue with that is he's always doing something. He's always on his phone, laptop, PS4, or painting. So it didn't work, and I was still doing almost everything on top of bringing home more money and technically working more hours. He only works 4 days a week. I work 5. We've probably had this conversation twice a month since I got this new job. Each time he promises to do better, but within 2 days, oh crap, I lost my monitor for a second.
In 2 days, it's back to normal.
I've explained, begged, reminded, asked, told, pleaded. It's not working. The last conversation was 2 weeks ago. He promised to step up and help me out more without being asked or reminded. Today, I cleaned his hair off the shower wall for the 4th time this month. I am so tired. I don't know what to say to him to make it stick. Please help.
Get a maid. Get a housekeeper coming in twice a week. Or don't give a care.
Here's the thing, though. I think it goes beyond that.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is one of those moments where whatever's happening with communication, this isn't working for it.
No.
Like that's the be all end all of it. And while right now it's chores,
Mm-hmm.
This is gonna spiral.
Right.
It always does. When unfortunately, chores are one of those things that are kind of a bellwether for everything else in a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, generally speaking, like the reliability of someone like doing simple, normal things like washing, folding, putting away laundry, cooking dinner, doing the dishes, taking out the trash, all this tends to like roll over into the rest of their life and how well they treat the rest of the relationship, and figuring out the communication for that
Mm-hmm.
is effectively going to help you in other areas.
Mm-hmm.
So that, maybe this is a situation that, like, I don't know. I was seeing a thing, and it's kind of cool. That one of the TikTokers that I follow, and I cannot remember her name right now. She's really cool. Was talking about ADHD and how there's different ways that and it also applies to not only her children but herself and her husband.
Mm-hmm.
That if you ask for something,
Mm-hmm.
if you phrase it the right way, you get exactly what you want and more.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't use the right combination of words, it hits their brain wrong, and it's like, I'll be damned if I ever do that.
Mm-hmm.
So and she's great. She has all kinds of cool stuff. But like the example she gave is very early on in her and her husband's marriage. He said, like, he had tore a pair of pants and said, I'm going to need you to fix these. And she basically looked at him and said, well, that's never going to happen now.
Mm-hmm.
If you want me to do that, you could ask.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's not what you did. You didn't ask me
Mm-hmm.
to fix your pants. You told me
Mm-hmm.
to fix your pants. And because you told me to do it, I'm not gonna.
Mm-hmm.
There can be that. If it's not that, if it's not a communication issue, then you're basically getting told this is a seasonal relationship.
Interesting point of view.
Is my perspective. What do you think?
My perspective is get a housekeeper.
Yeah,
That's the solution. You make more money than him, so you take it out of his money.
Mm-hmm.
And you draw the line, or you get used to a messy house.
Yeah, I can
Or you just
understand.
go, my favorite one is, my favorite solution to this is the, oh, damn it, now I can't think of the word. It's bring home the bacon and cook it.
The Angele.
The Angele solution. And I've done that for a while, and then it's like, no, this ain't working.
I mean, we struggle to get stuff done. Like, It's been crazy. We do what we can.
Mm-hmm.
We deal with the rest when we can. Like,
yeah, and it was probably okay until she began working from home. When you begin working from home, people change their point of view about your work.
mm-hmm. Well, but then there's this other weird thing that happens too, is when this is the only environment you're in,
Mm-hmm.
you get way more sensitive to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of like if you spend a lot of time driving, you get really sensitive, or I do, to like what your car looks like. Because this is all you see for hours and hours and hours at a time. Like, you have to stare at this. But then there are also people that just don't see a mess. Like, their tolerance level is at a different place. Like, you know, it's a little messy. It's a little more messy. And some people are just slobs. They just don't care. It's not important. They hold no value to a clean home. None whatsoever. Like, there was a really great Grey's Anatomy, I think, on that one. Where the one doctor like takes a boyfriend home and he's just like, what? Like, her place is wrecked. And like, it's not important. It's not a priority.
And you make those choices and those decisions. One of the things that we made a recent choice of is dishes piling, but I'm like, I'm tired of this. So we went paper and disposable. And we'll do that until I have time, or we have time to monitor to actually make sure dishes get done.
Yeah. Well, because it was driving us both a bit batty. And it was also one of those things, like, we did have that, like, look at each other conversation, like, this is crazy. Like, this is absolutely nuts. And it's like, let's go paper. Like, as crazy as that sounds, like, it's horrible for the environment. I know this. We know this. We're aware of this. But it's like, where? Like, they pile up faster than either of us can just take time to stand and do dishes. And every time we try to stand and do dishes, like, something has to happen. Like, someone needs something, a call comes in, you know, like, all of a sudden our phones are blowing up because it's like, I messaged you 5 minutes ago and haven't heard anything. It's important. And it's like, okay. We're done. Like, just call it. We're going paper. Like, it will vastly reduce the amount of dishes we have to do.
Exactly. And it has, and it's working for now. Is this the permanent solution that we will forever do? No. Is it the solution I'm comfortable with for the moment? Yeah. I may keep the coffee cups because I actually do like the style of coffee cup. It has a lid. So, you know, if my R8 flares up and I decide to throw a cup, it isn't that bad.
And it's not a weapon.
True.
Because here's the thing is, like, your other cups effectively, like, they are stainless steel, like, massive honking, like, Yetis.
Yes.
Or faux Yetis.
Or
those things hurt.
Or they're stoneware.
Yeah, they're stone. Yeah, we've got those too.
For stoneware. All right, guys, it's been a great night. We will be back Thursday night with Natalie McVickers with Coffee and Tea, where we'll be talking about something. Who knows? It'll be something. And then, of course, Mountain Bears will be taking on Hot Topics. So until then, you guys have a magical evening. Keep yourselves together. Have fun. And, you know, we want to thank our patrons because they take care of us a lot.
So, of course, we want to thank Beverly Walker, Mika G, Kathy, Mary Winfield, Brenda Bryant, Ashley Gist, Shannon C, Shannon D, the ever-wonderful Lady Gwendolyn, Charles Shaw, Dottie the Psychic, Tracy Van, and the Laughing Tree Grove. If you'd like to learn more about us or how you too can support the show and become one of our wonderful baristas and receive all the benefits they receive, please visit us at pcspnetwork.com.
Yep. All right, guys. Have a wonderful, magical night. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Let's work. Yo, it's go time, showtime, never backing down time. One shot, yo, make it count, yo. Crunch time, shine time, make this.
the fight.